A simple key, a dusty land, a hidden bunker. It seemed like nothing. But inside, your grandfather built a life-saving secret for children the world forgot. And now the responsibility is yours. Will you take it, or let it fade away like the dust on that hatch? Before we start, join our YouTube family by subscribing to the channel. Don't forget to like this video and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. Now let's get into the story. The day my grandfather's will was opened felt colder than any other day I could remember. The lawyer's office was quiet, but it was the kind of quiet that felt uncomfortable, like everyone in the room was waiting for something important to happen. My uncle sat on the right side of the table with his arms crossed. He looked impatient. My cousins sat beside him, whispering and smiling to each other. Everyone expected something valuable from the will. My grandfather had owned land outside the city, and people believed he had money saved somewhere. But I sat quietly at the end of the table, thinking about something else. I was thinking about my grandfather himself. To most people, he was just an old man who lived alone far from town. But to me, he was the only person who ever made me feel like I truly mattered. When I was younger, I used to visit him during school vacations. His small house stood near a wide, dusty field. There were no neighbors close by, just wind, old fences, and the sound of dry grass moving in the breeze. His house always smelled like warm tea and old books. He liked simple things. He cooked basic meals, fixed broken tools, and spent a lot of time writing in notebooks that he never showed anyone. Sometimes at night we would sit outside under the stars. I remember one night very clearly. The wind was strong and the sky was full of stars. My grandfather stared at the dark fields for a long time before speaking. "There are many children in this world," he said quietly, "who grow up without anyone protecting them." I didn't fully understand what he meant back then. I was still young, but he looked serious when he said it. "Sometimes," he continued, "one person must carry a promise for many others." I asked him what promise he meant, but he only smiled and changed the subject. Years passed and life became busy. School, work, and responsibilities slowly took my time. I didn't visit him as often as I should have. The last time I saw him was 2 years before he passed away. He looked older and weaker, but his eyes were still sharp and thoughtful. Now he was gone, and we were all sitting in the lawyer's office waiting to hear what he left behind. The lawyer finally cleared his throat and opened the final envelope. "This one," he said slowly, "is addressed to you." Everyone looked at me. My uncle leaned forward, curious. I opened the envelope carefully. Inside there was no money, no property documents, only 2 things, a small metal key and a folded letter written in my grandfather's careful handwriting. My uncle laughed immediately. "That's it?" he said loudly. "A key?" My cousins chuckled. But I didn't laugh. Something about the key felt different. It was old, heavy, and slightly cold in my hand. I opened the letter. The handwriting was neat but slightly shaky. It said, "If you are reading this, it means I am gone. I wish I had more time to explain everything. The key I left you opens the bunker under the dusty land beyond the old road. Go there alone. Do not bring anyone. When you enter, you will understand the promise I carried for many years." I looked up slowly. "Bunker?" I said quietly. The lawyer nodded and slid a folded map toward me. "Your grandfather legally transferred a piece of land to your name several years ago," he explained. "It is located outside the city. According to records, the land is empty farmland." My uncle shook his head with a smirk. "Your grandfather always liked strange mysteries," he said. "It's probably just an old storage shelter or some forgotten building." Maybe he was right, but something inside me said he wasn't. 2 days later, I drove to the land. The road there was long and dusty. The sky stretched wide above the fields, and the wind moved dry grass like waves. There were no houses nearby, no people, no noise, just open land and silence. I parked my car and stepped out. For a moment, I simply stood there. This land belonged to my grandfather once. Now it belonged to me. But it looked completely empty. I remembered the map and started walking toward the center of the field. The dry grass brushed against my legs as the wind pushed it back and forth. After nearly 15 minutes of walking, something unusual caught my eye. At first, it looked like a darker patch of ground. But when I moved closer, I realized it wasn't dirt. It was metal. Half buried under dust and weeds was a large steel hatch. My heart began to beat faster. I knelt down and brushed away the dirt. The hatch was thick and strong. A heavy lock sat in the middle. Slowly, I reached into my pocket. The key. For a moment, I simply stared at it. Then I pushed it into the lock. It fit perfectly. When I turned the key, the lock made a deep clicking sound that echoed across the empty field. The metal hatch slowly creaked open. Cold air rushed out from below. A metal ladder disappeared into darkness. I stood there silently. My grandfather's words echoed in my mind. When you enter, you will understand the promise. Taking a deep breath, I climbed down the ladder. The ladder seemed long, much longer than I expected. The sunlight above slowly became smaller and smaller until it was just a tiny square of light. When my feet finally touched the ground, something surprising happened. Lights flickered on, one after another. The bunker slowly filled with soft white light. I looked around in shock. This place was not broken or destroyed like I expected. It was organized. Metal shelves lined the walls. Old desks stood in the corners. Dust covered many surfaces, but everything looked carefully arranged. This bunker had once been used for something important. Then I noticed several wooden boxes stacked near the center of the room. Each box had labels. I walked closer. The first box said, letters. The second one said, records. The third box made my heart stop. It said, for the day you finally arrive. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were hundreds of photographs. Children, many different children, different ages, different faces. Some looked happy, some looked scared, some looked lost. On the back of each photo was a short note written by my grandfather. Safe now. Found a home. Still watching over? My chest tightened. Why would my grandfather keep photos of so many children? Then I saw the last object inside the box. An old video recorder. Next to it was a tape with my name written on it. The bunker suddenly felt very quiet. My hand slowly picked up the tape. If this was meant for me, then my grandfather had been planning this moment for many years. I inserted the tape into the player. The screen flickered. Static filled the room. Then my grandfather appeared on the screen. He looked older and tired, but his eyes were calm. He leaned closer to the camera. If you're watching this, he said softly, then you found the bunker. He paused for a moment. Then he said something that made my heart pound faster than ever. This place was never built for war. He looked directly into the camera. It was built to protect children the world forgot. I leaned closer to the screen, because in that moment I realized the bunker wasn't hiding weapons. It was hiding something far more important, and my grandfather had spent his entire life protecting it. But what I didn't know yet was that the truth waiting inside the bunker would change my life forever. I sat there in the quiet bunker staring at the screen where my grandfather's face had just appeared. My heart was beating fast. Seeing him again felt strange. He looked older than the last time I saw him in real life, but his eyes were calm, like he had already prepared for this moment long ago. The video continued. My child, he said softly, if you are watching this, it means you trusted the key and came here alone. That was important, because the truth inside this bunker is not just a secret, it is a responsibility. I leaned closer to the screen without even realizing it. My grandfather slowly reached toward something beside him and lifted a photograph. It was a picture of a little boy. The boy looked about 6 years old. His clothes were worn and his face looked tired, but his eyes were bright. This was the first child I ever helped, my grandfather said. His name was Daniel. He paused for a moment. Many years ago, I was working as a mechanic in a small town near the border. One night I found this boy sleeping behind a grocery store. He had no food, no family, and nowhere to go. My grandfather looked down at the photograph for a second before continuing. I gave him food and a place to sleep for the night. But the next morning, when I tried to find help for him, I discovered something terrible. There were hundreds of children like him. Children without homes. Children nobody was protecting. The video paused for a moment as he took a slow breath. I could not save them all, he said quietly. But I promised myself I would help as many as I could. The screen went dark for a second, then a new image appeared. It showed the bunker many years ago, but it looked different then. There were people working at desks, papers everywhere, and boxes being moved around. My grandfather stood in the middle of the room, younger and stronger. This bunker was once part of an old military project, his voice explained. But when the project ended, the government abandoned it. Most people forgot it even existed. He looked directly into the camera again. But I didn't forget. I slowly looked around the room again. Suddenly the shelves and boxes made more sense. This place had never been about weapons. It had been about protection. The video continued. At first I only helped a few children, he said. I found them safe places to stay. I used my savings to buy food, clothes, and school books. But as the years passed, I realized something important. He paused again. Helping them once was not enough. They needed someone watching over them for years. The screen changed again. Now there were dozens of photographs moving across the screen. Children of all ages. Some smiling, some serious, some looking shy. These are the children whose lives crossed my path, my grandfather said softly. My chest felt tight. I slowly turned toward the wooden boxes again. All those photographs inside them suddenly felt much heavier. Every child you see here, he continued, was once alone in the world. He lifted another photograph. But they are not alone anymore. I stood up slowly and walked toward the box of letters. My hands felt slightly shaky as I opened one of the envelopes. Inside was a letter written by a young girl. Dear Grandpa, it said, thank you for helping me go to school. I want to become a doctor one day so I can help other children like you helped me. My throat felt tight as I finished reading it. There were hundreds of letters. Hundreds. My grandfather had spent his entire life helping children, and nobody in the family had known. The video continued playing. There is something else you must understand, he said. His voice sounded more serious now. This bunker was never just a shelter. It became something bigger. The screen showed a large map. Small marks appeared across different countries. Each mark had a small number beside it. These marks represent children who grew up and started new lives, he explained. My eyes widened. There were marks everywhere. Cities, towns, even different continents. They became teachers, mechanics, nurses, builders, and farmers, my grandfather continued. They started families. They helped others. He looked directly into the camera again, and every one of them carries a small piece of the promise. I felt a strange warmth in my chest, but then the tone of his voice changed slightly. There is something I must tell you, he said slowly. I leaned forward again. Not everyone believed what I was doing was right. The screen changed again. This time it showed newspaper articles. Some of them had my grandfather's name. Others had words like illegal shelter and unauthorized care. Some people believed I was interfering with systems that were already in place, he explained. But I could not ignore children who were suffering. I understood now. Helping so many children, quietly for decades, must have created problems with authorities and organizations. The video paused again. My grandfather looked tired now, older. But I am running out of time, he said. He reached for a final folder. This bunker contains every record, every contact, and every letter connected to the children I helped. My heart began to beat faster again, because I already knew what he was about to say. I protected this promise for many years, he said softly. But now I cannot continue. He looked straight into the camera, and that is why I left the key to you. The bunker suddenly felt very quiet again. I slowly turned around. The shelves, the letters, the photographs, the maps. This place was not just a secret. It was a life's work. My grandfather spoke again. There are still children out there who need help. And there are many people connected to this network who still trust this place. He paused. But something has changed. His voice became serious. Recently, someone has been trying to find this bunker. My heart skipped a beat. I do not know who they are, he continued. But they have been asking questions about the children and the records. Cold fear slowly moved through me. If the wrong person finds this bunker, he said quietly, the identities of hundreds of children could be exposed. He leaned closer to the camera. That is why you must be careful. The screen flickered slightly. There is a second room in this bunker, he said. I looked around quickly. I had not noticed any other doors. Inside that room, he continued, is the final piece of the promise. The screen slowly faded darker. But be warned, he said quietly. Once you open that door, your life will never be simple again. The video stopped. The screen went black. The bunker became silent again. For a moment I didn't move. Then I slowly turned around, because somewhere inside this bunker, there was a second room I hadn't seen yet, and something inside it was important, enough for my grandfather to protect for his entire life. But as I stepped forward to search for the hidden door, I suddenly heard something that made my blood run cold. Footsteps, above me, on the metal hatch. The ladder inside the bunker was old but strong. I climbed down slowly while the weak yellow light from above followed me. When my feet touched the ground, I realized the bunker was much bigger than I had imagined. It was not a small military room. It was huge. Long hallways stretched into darkness. Metal doors lined the walls. Old wires ran along the ceiling. Dust covered everything, but the structure still felt solid and safe. My grandfather had taken care of this place. I turned on a flashlight I found near the ladder. The beam cut through the darkness and revealed something surprising. Beds, many beds, at least 30 of them. Each bed had a small wooden box beside it. Some boxes still had old toys inside. A small teddy bear, a toy truck, a wooden puzzle. My heart started beating faster. "Kids," I whispered. Why would children live inside a military bunker? I walked deeper into the hallway. On the wall, I saw old drawings taped to the metal surface. Crayon drawings of houses, trees, suns, and smiling stick figures. Children's drawings. My chest felt heavy. Then I saw a large metal door at the end of the hall. Unlike the other doors, this one had a digital lock beside it. And something else. A keyhole. I slowly took the old key my grandfather had left me. My hand trembled as I pushed it into the lock. Click. The door unlocked. When I opened it, the lights inside suddenly turned on automatically. The room was enormous, but it wasn't a military control room. It was a living space. A kitchen. A study area. Shelves full of books. Food storage. Medical supplies. And on the walls were photographs. Hundreds of them. Children of different ages. Some smiling, some shy, some holding drawings. Under every photo was a small name and a year. I walked closer. My hands shook as I read the names. Most of them had no last names, just first names. Then I saw a message written on the wall in my grandfather's handwriting. I built this place for the children the world forgot. My throat tightened. He hadn't left me land. He had left me a mission. I slowly walked across the room, staring at the photos. There were so many kids who had lived here, kids who had been protected here, kids who had escaped something. But from what? Then something strange caught my eye. In the center of the room stood a metal table with a computer on it. The computer looked newer than everything else, which meant someone had used it recently. I slowly walked toward it. When I pressed the power button, the screen lit up instantly. No password. Just a single video file. My heart pounded as I clicked it. The screen flickered, and suddenly my grandfather appeared. He looked older than I remembered, sitting in this very bunker room. "Hello, Lucas," he said gently. My chest tightened, hearing his voice again. "If you are watching this, it means I am gone, and you have found the bunker." He paused for a moment. "I know you must be confused." I nodded slowly at the screen. "You probably think this place was for war," he continued. "But it was never meant for war." He looked directly into the camera. "It was meant for protection." I leaned closer to the screen. "Many years ago I learned something terrible," he said quietly. "There are children in this world who disappear, and no one looks for them." My stomach twisted. Runaways, orphans, foster kids who slip through broken systems. Children no one protects. He took a deep breath. "So I built this place." The camera showed quick flashes of the bunker when it was new. Clean beds, bright lights, children eating meals, kids laughing. My eyes widened. "This bunker became a shelter," he continued. "A safe place. A hidden home for children who had nowhere else to go." My throat felt tight. "But safety must stay hidden," he said. "If bad people ever found this place, those children would be in danger again." He looked serious now. "So everything here was kept secret." I stared at the photos again. So many lives saved, but then my grandfather said something that froze me. "However, there is something even more important you must know." He leaned closer to the camera. This bunker does not belong to you. My eyebrows lifted in confusion. It belongs to them. He pointed to the wall of children's photos. The children who lived here. I looked back at the pictures. My grandfather continued. Many of those children grew up. They built lives, families, careers, and they all know about this place. My heart started racing. They come back sometimes, he said softly, quietly, secretly, to help the next lost child. Suddenly I heard something behind me. A sound. Footsteps. My entire body froze, slow footsteps echoing in the hallway. Someone was inside the bunker. I slowly turned around. The hallway light flickered slightly, and then 3 people stepped into the room. A tall woman, a man with a beard, and a young guy around my age. They all looked directly at me. The woman spoke first. You must be Lucas. My mouth went dry. How do you know my name? The bearded man smiled gently. Because your grandfather told us about you. My mind spun. Who are you people? I asked. The young guy stepped forward. He looked nervous, but hopeful. My name is Daniel, he said. Then he pointed to one of the photos on the wall. A small boy holding a toy truck. That's me. My eyes widened. You lived here? He nodded. All of us did. The woman spoke again. Your grandfather saved many children here. The bearded man added quietly. And now, we continue his work. My heart pounded. You mean, this place is still active? The woman nodded slowly. Yes. Then she pointed toward the dark hallway behind them. And tonight, a new child arrives. My mind struggled to understand everything. My grandfather's land, the bunker, the secret shelter, the network of kids he had saved. He hadn't left me money. He hadn't left me power. He had left something far bigger. Responsibility. The woman stepped closer. Your grandfather believed something about you. I looked at her nervously. What? She smiled softly. He believed you would protect this place. I turned and looked at the wall of photos again. So many children. So many second chances. Then Daniel said something that made chills run through my body. There's one more thing you should know. I looked back at him. What? He pointed toward a locked door at the far end of the bunker. A door I hadn't noticed before. That door, he swallowed nervously, has never been opened. My heart skipped. Why? Daniel looked at me with wide eyes. Because your grandfather said only one person could open it. The room fell silent. Slowly, everyone turned to look at me. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. The strange key my grandfather gave me was not just for the bunker. It was for that final door.